Hello, this is Mayfield, and thank you for tuning into the broadcast today. I appreciate so much you listening. I do Bible sermon videos every day on the internet, and I appreciate you sharing these and subscribing to these channels, and I appreciate it very much, and thank you. I want to continue my second series on Jonah. I covered Jonah, when he ran from the presence of the Lord and got on a ship and sailed towards Tarshish. And now I want to pick it up a little bit later in part 2. But the Lord sent out a great wind. Notice there it said that the Lord sent out a great wind into the sea. And there was a mighty tempest in the sea, so that the ship was about to be broken. This storm was intended for Jonah because of his rebellion. And we know that hurricanes were not uncommon in this particular area, but God had sent this mighty wind for a purpose and a reason, to try to get the message through to Jonah that he was to go back to Tarshish and preach and cry out against that great city. The ship was coming apart, and Jonah was asleep. Can you imagine a man that's in danger like he was is asleep? And nothing has seemed to bother him. He's all relaxed. He thinks he's got away from the voice of God. He's out sailing on the deep blue sea. But there's a storm that's fixing to really get a hold of them. It doesn't pay to run from God. And I want to tell you, you can't run from God. God knows where you're at. God's got your number. And one day we're all going to have to stand before God. We're going to have to always stand before Him. If you don't stand before Him now and confess Him as Lord now, eventually you're going to have to, and that won't be a good time. If you rebel against God, there's a storm always on the horizon. And He didn't want to go to Nineveh because there were different people there, and I don't think He liked the people too well. And there was prejudice there, and we should never be prejudiced against other people, regardless of the color of skin. We should love everyone. The shipmaster came to him and said unto him, What meanest thou, O sleeper? Question. Arise and call upon thy God. And if it so be God thinks upon us that we perish not. And they cast lots to see who was the blame, and the lot fell upon Jonah in verse number 7. That's interesting, casting lots like that. I don't know that I would use that method, but that's the method that was used, and God's always got a way of dialing our number. Tell us why, they asked Jonah, is this evil befallen on us? What is your occupation? Where do you came from? What country are you from? And what people? Then he said to them in verse number 9, a startling word, I am a Hebrew. Then they were exceedingly afraid, the men on board, and they said unto him, why hast thou done this? Why have you done this? For the men knew he had fled from the Lord, because he had told them in verse number 10. Then the men said unto him, What shall we do unto thee, that the sea may be calm unto us? In verse number 12. And Jonah said, The only thing that's left to do is just to cast me into the sea. That's the same as saying, just throw me overboard, I don't have a chance. So they cast Jonah into the sea, and the sea ceased from raging when they threw him overboard. Can you imagine out there with them throwing him overboard, and he's out there? And the only thing that is going to save his life is this great fish that's about to come and swallow him. People think sometimes you're lost out there at sea and nowhere, but God had preferred a fish, a great fish, and I will get to that in my next session. And I want to tell you, it doesn't pay to run from God. It's good to be obedient to God. Come back to God. Call upon God. If you used to be a Christian and you've turned away from God, now is the time to turn back. This is Raymond Mayfield. I'm praying for you and I love you. Thank you for listening.